Hello everyone, and welcome back. Since our last visit, I've spent many hours honing my alchemical craft. Through the rush of everyday life in Tamriel, it's sometimes difficult to remember to stop and smell the comberry flowers. If you do though, it can be very rewarding, both in its intrinsic value and mystical properties. I've noted all the potion making knowledge there is to date and would love to share it with you. Without further ado, let us begin our journey through the alchemy of the Elder Scrolls. In Tamriel, the term alchemy refers to something a little different than external histories would suggest. The original definition of alchemy goes back to Eastern pseudoscience and mythology. It concerned the refinement and production of more pure versions of different natural materials. The most well-known example of this is the study of chrysopia, or the transmutation of silver into gold. The study of chrysopia was both literal and figurative, with people seeking to expand its products into monetary ventures and beyond. One of the most notable goals was creating the Philosopher's Stone, a mineral from which elixirs of immortality could be born. Here we come a little closer to how alchemy is handled in the realm of Tamriel. More specifically, the process of alchemy deals with the combination of natural ingredients within certain apparatus in order to make potions and poisons. All of these products come in a range of mystical effects, both positive and negative, and are all dependent upon what is mixed together and how. The refinement of alchemy as a magical science was solidified by Asliel Dairini, a high elf from Somerset Isle. After discovering some medicinal effects of certain plants in the Merethic era, Asliel quickly moved himself into a position of authority. His skills were tested when vampirism plagued his homeland. In response, Asliel formulated a potion that poisoned the blood of the drinker. This was harmless to the imbiber, but as soon as a vampire sank teeth into them, it was good night. The vampire would fall dead and the victim would be unharmed. So great were his skills in making alchemy a broadly accepted science that he was actually inducted into the Psijic Order, a group of wizards and researchers dedicated to the mystic ways. Another renowned alchemist, a Breton named Gryon Vardengrote, actually created a potion of immortality. This took an untold number of tries, however, and by the time he realized he had stopped aging, he was unsure of which concoction was to blame. To this day, he studies different materials in the hopes that he will remember. And so it was that alchemy gained traction in many locations throughout Tamriel. These applications were not only devoted to potion making, however. In fact, the simple brewing of different beverages could also be considered alchemy. The production of simple beer involves milling, boiling, fermentation, and distillation of different plants in order to produce the beverage. The same could be said for basic teas, many of which are simply the combination of different plants through which hot water is poured. Outside of Tamriel, the effects of this form of alchemy are very real. In fact, much of our remedies could not exist without it. For example, the commonly known acetaminophen comes from coal tar. Better yet, the ascomycotyl penicillium is responsible for penicillin, an antibiotic medication that derives its effects from the penicillium's natural immunities. On the topic of beverages again, we could look at teas and coffee. These contain caffeine, which acts as a stimulant, leading us to become very alert and productive. Both of these come from plants, the Camellia sinensis and Coffea arabica. I myself admit to drinking lots of tea when I'm producing treatises such as this. Alchemy is just so intriguing and amazing that I needed to explore it further. Now I would like to share my findings with you. But first, I should brew a potion that will further enhance my focus as we travel. We begin with distilled comberry juice to restore any magicka drained from production of the treatise. Next, we add ground elf cup caps from Cyrodiil. This will enhance my strength as I journey physically through the process of ingredient acquisition. Next, we add ground shock beetle from the Grazelands. This will enhance the speed of production, that way this project does not take half a year to complete. To thicken the mixture and allow for definite combination, we add resin from the trees of the Ascadian Isles. This will also restore health and speed, nullifying any negative effects of the other ingredients. And finally, we mix in ectoplasm from a lost spirit laid to rest. Please do not write with inquiry as to how this was obtained. I assure you that the family of the spirit paid for its banishment, and this was conducted in accordance with their wishes. Now we drink.
Ugh.
Delicious. Now that this concoction is imbibed, I will quickly explain the rules of our venture. Firstly, I will only discuss the most important effects of each ingredient, seeing as our fair realm is home to hundreds, perhaps even more, potential reagents. Second, every ingredient will be foraged or hunted organically if possible. Some reagents have sources shrouded in mystery and must be purchased from elusive and resourceful shopkeepers. Finally, the locations of each ingredient will be conveyed according to where this alchemist found them. This is not indicative of the only location in which they exist, simply one where they are in fact known to reside. With this, we will journey through Tamriel. Let us begin. In the 389th year of the Third Era, the knowledge of alchemy was not very widespread. Because of this, adventurers could often find lost potions in dungeons or purchase them from knowledgeable parties. However, it was very rare for said adventurer to ever know how to concoct a brew themselves. 16 short years later, the practice of alchemy was becoming a little more well known. There were many shops which sold ingredients for adventurers to come across. Still, the actual processes of alchemical production were a closely held secret, known only to a relatively small circle of mystics. In fact, it was not uncommon for them to only offer their services to members of specific factions, even including the reviled Dark Brotherhood. Still, the passing of 16 years did much to familiarize adventurers with the appearance and properties of certain ingredients. This would play a role in the widespread adoption not long after. In a surprise to many, including myself, there was in fact a handful of people in the late Second Era, specifically year 864, that knew how to at least sublimate ingredients. The most notable of these were probably the evil Slode Nagasta and the noble Redguard Cyrus. Focusing on the hero, we have historical accounts of his ventures in Stros Makai, just off the southern coast of Hammerfell. There was a mages guild he often visited there, and one which was very well acquainted with a handful of ingredients.
Hello, Felicia.
Hello again.
What's for sale?
Magical potions of all sorts.
This owed in no small part to the efforts of the Archmage.
Leave me, please. I have much to do.
Combining a mixture of various liquids with different alchemical ingredients produced certain sublimations with beneficial properties. For example, the stocks of the Mages Guild were so abundant that they allowed endless use from Cyrus and other visitors. When mixing things such as orc's blood, the sources of which have been lost to history, probably for the better, with an organ sac from a pig, one could create a potion of iron skin and strength. If drank purely on their own, the few solvents known to the region to hold alchemical potential were difficult to ingest, to say the least.
Ugh, that's nasty. My. That is truly vile. Damn, that's foul.
In terms of solvents, we had a small handful.
It's spider's milk. It's orc's blood. It's ectoplasm. It's hist sap.
These could be mixed with the following ingredients for a very limited selection of effects. Most combinations resulted in nothing usable. Amber, Daedra heart, lich dust, pig sac, saint's hair, salamander, spriggan's ear, and unicorn horn. From what we know now, this limited understanding coming from the island of Stros Makai cannot be discounted in the overall proliferation of alchemical science. Hey everyone, real quick, if you find yourself enjoying the video and maybe even learning something new, please consider subscribing and liking for more. This helps immensely as a small channel, and I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the video. Though I have not been inducted into the Psijic Order myself, I have made some connections with certain individuals that have allowed me the option of time travel. Using this, we can visit the once pristine lands of Vardenfell, a large island north of the mainland of Morrowind. This land is exceedingly abundant with alchemical reagents if one knows where to seek them. In fact, the practice of alchemy was widespread here even in the 427th year of the Third Era. It was taught in the Mages Guild, and the practice could be supplied by many shops in the region. Here, the skill was known to be governed by the intelligence attribute, owing to its specificity and dangers of miscalculation. The craft was much more refined than in the previous eras we discussed. Most any adventurer could get their hands on a set of alchemical apparatus with which to conduct their experiments. This often included 4 specific pieces, all of which I will describe to you now. Firstly, a mortar and pestle were completely required. This was the basis of any good poultice, allowing the user to grind and mix ingredients with ease. They could then use the invigorated reagents in mixtures of water, the purity of which was said to also affect the outcome. The mortar and pestle are often made from various materials, more expensive as you move from clay to stone, then stone to metal. These enhancements also make sure that bits and pieces of cheaper apparatus do not flake off and find their way into the mixture, becoming unknown reagents and bringing all sorts of consequences. Moving on, we have the alembic. This piece consists of 3 parts, which include the cucurbit, the cap, and the receiver. The cucurbit is a pot which the mixture is placed within. This is heated from below by flame. The cap fits over the cucurbit to receive the vapors from the mixture, and then sends them down a hose or pipe into the receiver. The receiver follows its name and houses the resultant mixture of liquids and vapors from condensation of the original mixture. The sum of these parts, the alembic, reduces the strength and duration of all negative effects, quite literally burning them out of the mixture. Next we have the calcinator. This piece is fairly simple and only concerns the heating and perhaps boiling of an ingredient up to right below its melting point. This is done to enhance all effects, both positive and negative, refining the ingredients placed within. Finally, we have the alchemical retort. This functions somewhat similarly to the alembic, distilling solvents in order to bring only the most refined, pure gases and liquids into the final product. Heated from the bottom plate, the mixture of ingredients sends vapors upward which are collected and sent through the tube into a new vial. The use of a retort enhances all positive effects in both strength and duration. When used all together, this apparatus serves to create fantastic potions. Better yet, although cumbersome, it can be used on the go. This means adventurers can create potions at will, immediately combining new ingredients to learn their shared effects. It is wonderful news to the botanist, biologist, or even the wild camper. Notice though that I have only really touched on potions. There are indeed poisons that can be created, however the weaponry of the region is often incapable of maintaining residue for long periods. This means coating a weapon is often folly, because the mixture will simply slide off before use. It says nothing of poisoning food, of course, but that is fairly rare outside of certain shadowy factions. Now that we have discussed the basics, our real adventure is about to begin. First, we will forage the various regions of Vvardenfell, then move on to the mainland and even the island of Solstheim. After this, we will begin hunting the various creatures that offer ingredients worth the trouble. There are over 100 reagents to be found. Let us put our boots on and venture out into Morrowind. The southwestern region of Vvardenfell is known as the Ascadian Isles. It plays host to giant mushroom trees known as emperor parasols, as well as many lush grasses and other vegetation. The land is fertile enough to grow many different staple crops of the island, and plantations abound as there is much money to be made. The proximity to the ocean seems not to be a hindrance, and some say the magic of Vivec himself aids in prevention of saltwater intrusion. It is usually sunny here, with occasional rainfall. The air is humid, just perfect for the emperor parasols and the many other life forms that abound. Very similar to common yams outside of Nirn, this tuber is an abundant food crop. It offers fortification of intelligence and strength, as well as disease resistance and, strangely, the magical detection of keys. This food may be one of the primary reasons so many Dunmer are intelligent enough to become skilled mages. The black anther is named for its potent reproductive organ atop purple flowers. If dusted into a solvent, this can produce potions of fire resistance. Also, this is one of only 2 ingredients that can make light potions, the other being red lichen. The spontaneous creation of light is indeed a useful effect for late-night study sessions. The green and purple comberry is said to be bitter and is used as the base of a brandy native to the region, as well as grief, sheen, and sujama. Sujama is made from barley, comberry, and lemon. The brandy of the region shares no common magical effects of the comberry, so they must be boiled out at some point. The same goes for the other drinks. The effects of the comberry are magic restoration, fire shielding, and reflection of oncoming spells. The corkbulb plant, a common crop in the Ascadian Isles, produces a root which is said to be tough and fibrous. Hence, it is used in lieu of trees wood. Just eating one can cure you instantly of paralysis. If mixed properly, they can restore one's health, fortify their luck, and provide them with a lightning shield. They are also used by marksmen to create both arrows and bolts. All of these effects lead the corkbulb to be a very lucrative crop. The beautiful yellow flowers of the gold cannet can be used for potions of strength restoration. These are fantastic for any and all dungeon delvers, though particularly to grave robbers and hunters of necromancers. Aside from alchemical uses, I tend to give these flowers to friends as gifts in my travels, such as Anasi and Pelagiad. Heather is a plant which produces pink flowers all throughout the southern regions of the island. If harvested, it can be used to magically reduce one's physical burdens. A fragrant plant, perfumes of this variety are also sure to enhance one's standing in social settings. The anther of the common pink willow flower is another useful ingredient in alchemical pursuits. This segment of the plant houses lots of pollen which can coat the tongue if not properly mixed into dishes. It is often used in medicinal potions for treatment of disease and paralysis. The Ashlands make up a sizable portion of the island of Vardenfell, including all areas surrounding the Great Red Mountain. It makes sense then that the region is primarily grey and ashy, resulting from the minor eruptions and volcanic activity. Here and there are pools of boiling tar and small smokestacks, and, rarer than these, are the plants and animals which exist in the area. Many of them stick close to the edges of the hills, making use of deposited ash as a material from which to derive substance. This ash is also compounded by common storms, including those which contain the evil magics of the blight disease. This region is no joke and should be tread very carefully, or not at all, by regular wanderers or outlanders. Perhaps the rarest harvestable ingredient in Vardenfell, the black lichen exists only upon some rocks in the province. Lichen, a conundrum to some, is actually just a symbiotic combination of algae and fungus. The fungus offers structure and placement as well as minerals externally digested from the rock it is attached to, while the alga offers energy from photosynthesis. This combination is definitely not a plant, not the least of which because it is unicellular. However, bryophytes are believed to have evolved from algae, so the more you know. As far as how the ingredient functions alchemically, it offers frost resistance and cures to poison. Found in very few places, the red lichen is just as rare as black. There are only 25 known locations from which to harvest it on the island. Along with black anther, red lichen is the only ingredient for creating light potions. It can also cure common diseases, but there are far more abundant resources to be used for such a case. Though it looks rough and dry, alchemical scathecraw is actually a selection of soft tissue from inside the main plant. It is not a common foodstuff, but can be used in potions for restoration of willpower and cures to poison. These help immensely when encountering allet in the region. Azura's coast is the name given to the southeastern collection of islands. Few people live in these areas as they are difficult to traverse, and as such, there is little development other than Sadrith Mora. It is often cloudy, but doesn't seem to rain very much. When it does, a few vegetative species suck up all that they can. As a result, there are not many species to be found here, though the ones that do exist can be procured for some useful alchemical effects. Crushweed has a sticky resin that seeps from the leaves, which may be used as glues for different crafts on the island, especially by the Ashlander tribes. These can hold clothing, structures, weapons, etc. together for repeated use. If one can avoid gluing their fingers together, they can mix the fibers with other ingredients to make potions of luck restoration and fortification of personality. The marshmallow plants grow tall along the coastlines. Their riparian nature allows them to make use of both terrestrial and aquatic materials. Although one would expect them to be quite salty as a result, their pulp is actually quite sweet. When mixed with other ingredients, they can offer health restoration and detection of enchantments. These are abundant and should be harvested if seen, as they are one of the few commonly available reagents for health restoration. The muck found in sponges throughout southern Vardenfell is toxic and must be prepared correctly if one is to consume it. The slime is very fibrous, and harvesters use something called a muck shovel in order to retrieve it. If done successfully, the ingredient can be used to make potions of key detection and common disease cure. An easily recognizable quarry, this plant thrives on the southern half of the island of Vardenfell. It grows along the water's edge and serves as a staple export due to its enjoyable taste and nutritious efficiency. It has a host of positive effects, such as restoration of health and fatigue, as well as fortification of magicka. It is also fermented and used to create mazte, or used in baking to create local bread varieties. The Bitter Coast is the first region typically encountered by newcomers to Vardenfell, or those visiting from the mainland. The region is swampy and sour, muck ponds abounding, periodically breached by pneumatophores of the trees. These allow for gas exchange in an area with tightly packed and muddy soil. In these pools are also vibrant blue mushrooms, plants, and green lily pads. Although the ground is quite uneven, there are a handful of settlements in the region. All around these are tall swamp trees with hanging vines, unfurling ferns, and exciting fungal species which make use of the damp, warm conditions. The ampule pod is the immature form of the draggletail plant. Ampules are typically glass capsules filled with liquid. In this case, we can guess it's filled with swamp water drawn through the xylem of the plant. Eating this would be like consuming nature's stinky gusher. However, this would immediately grant the ability to walk on water, so it may be an even trade. If mixed in potions, it also offers animal detection. It can create a paralyzing poison, so be careful when choosing reagents to mix this with. The Bungler's Bane, an orangish shell fungi in the Bitter Coast, can only be used for potions that dispel negative effects of magic on the imbiber. That, or it can be mixed into a poison which drains all abilities related to movement. Hence, it is the Bungler's Bane, as only a bungler would eat it and suffer its effects. The coda flower is the fruiting body of Draggletail. They glow in the dark when intact. Also, the word coda means a concluding remark, action, or ending of the segment, which fits as this is the final life stage of the Draggletail. The only positive effect of this ingredient is levitation, one that makes sense as the plant rises high above the murky pools of the swamps in order to bloom. A morphologically similar fungi to the Bungler's Bane, the Hyphaphacea also grows as a bracket fungi. Its name is actually somewhat funny. Hypha is basically hyphae, which are the branching filaments that form mycelium, the base structure of a fungus. Fascia refer to bands of connecting tissue, so this fungi may as well be called mycelial mycelium. As far as its alchemical effects, the only positive is detection of enchantment. The others drain luck, agility, and fatigue, so experimenters should be careful with this ingredient. Like the coda flower, these mushrooms emanate a bluish glow around themselves, similar to the Mycena chlorophyos, which use oxyluciferin to attract bugs which will carry their spores to distant locations. They can also be eaten while one is swimming so as to make use of their magical water-breathing capabilities, though of course the professional alchemist would concoct something to last much longer than a few seconds. They are also one of a few ingredients that are capable of producing a pure poison and should be ingested with antidotes at the ready. The spore pods are the tips of the sloth fern, the prematurely harvested fiddleheads of the plant. These only serve one useful purpose, the detection of keys. Otherwise, they are best left alone, as the unwitting alchemist could trigger their attribute-draining poisons. One of the 4 common fungi in the Bitter Coast, the violet copernus is a useful ingredient. If brewed specifically with the luminous russula, this mushroom can create pure poison. On the other hand, it can also be eaten while deep in water, which will propel you up and through the surface. Depending on your depth, you could experience the bends as a result of rapid pressure decrease, which forms nitrogen bubbles in your blood. I recommend only using this strategy in freshwater locations. Also, do make sure to clean the fungi very well, as it is named copernus for a reason. It grows from the dung of native animal life. The northeastern regions of the island are very unique, though rarely visited by metropolitan citizens. Instead, they are populated by the nomadic Ashlanders, which move across them with the rains and wild game as necessary. The verdant plains are filled with all sorts of useful alchemical plants, as well as deadly beasts which feed upon these and smaller animals. Some of these deal poison damage to victims, so remedies should be maintained in one's supplies. The undulating hills are a true quarry to those willing to brave the harsh wilderness. The leaves of the hackalow plants are invigorating, sweet, and enjoyable. They have a high price, so harvesting them from the Grazelands is a quick option to resettle your pocketbooks. If used in potion making, they offer restoration of luck and fatigue, as well as imbuing the drinker with powers of water breathing. Growing in the Grazelands, this wild grain is so numerous that it may begin to outcompete other species. In fact, it is the most abundant vegetation on the island of Vardenfell. Some say eating too much of it can lessen your intelligence. This, however, is only an old folktale, most likely told to the Ashlander children to stress the importance of variety in diet. It can, however, restore one's health and fortify their willpower, 2 great effects for any alchemist. Sometimes considered a continuation of the Ashlands, and for good reason, the grey wastes of Molag Amur stretch toward the southeastern reaches of Azura's coast. The key difference between this region and the contiguous Ashlands are the numerous surface-level lava rivers. As such, it is wise to bring potions of fire resistance if visiting. Throughout the region are also dead, blackened trees and other remnants of previous life rendered dead through volcanic flows. Of course, there do exist the hardy plants of the Ashlands as well, each managing to somehow persist in this difficult, craggy region. Growing in the drier areas of the island, The fire petals offer resistance to said fire as well as spell absorption. I imagine these to taste a bit spicy, having a level of capsaicin to discourage predators from eating at their costly growths. They are easily recognizable for their pretty red petals. The snaking roots of the trauma plant are used to create teas which include something akin to caffeine, as they can rouse the drinker to become more active. They can also offer levitation when mixed with cliff racer plumes, an incredibly useful potion to keep on hand. Red Mountain, the central volcano around which all of Vvardenfell's other regions exist, is a sector to be avoided at all cost. There are near constant storms, the winds of which carry magical blight diseases in their gale. The sickly beasts also offer their own dangers. There are few, if any, worthy alchemical ingredients to be found here. If one is going through the ghost fence for any reason, it is imperative that they first mix potions of disease and blight resistance, two effects that will easily be learned in this guide. Still, this alchemist recommends against visiting the region at all. On the northern coast of Vvardenfell is a strange rocky region known as Sheogorad, named most likely after the Daedric prince Sheogorath. Traveling here is very difficult without the aid of swift swim or water walking potions. The region is mostly uninhabited due to these travel constraints, and only one port exists in the town of Dagon Fell. Across the main contiguous island are a few Dwemer ruins and other interesting dungeons, but nearly all of them are inhabited by dangerous creatures. Of particular interest to me are the unique mushroom trees to be found here, somewhat reminiscent of those seen in some areas of Azura's coast. They have yet to be named or alchemically described, and such research should be conducted at the earliest possible chance. The West Gash is an interesting region stretching northwest from Balmora and north of the Bitter Coast. This region is known for many types of trees and fields of flowering plants. To the north are more key features, namely natural rock bridges that confound even the smartest geologists. The largest mining operation of the island, the Caldera Mine, exists within this region. Though ebony can be found elsewhere, this is indeed a major store. Other than that particular ingredient, there are plenty of drought-tolerant plants to be found, along with the solitary hunters known as Nixhounds. They do often carry disease, and so potions of resistance should be maintained when entering these lands. Although bitter is in the name, these sound like they would make great garnishes or spices for different dishes. They restore intelligence after a long day of study, and can also be used to make potions of invisibility, which is interesting given their blatant, strange nature, looking like a grass octopus. Chokeweed branches are most likely named after their dry and scratchy taste. If one mixes them into potions, they do offer cures to common disease. This follows, as many medicinal herbs and ingredients are in fact difficult to get down. This particular lichen, the green variety, is known as a quick cure-all when it comes to common diseases and is often used in medicine. It grows far away from the other two types of lichen and can be used to fortify one's personality as well. The rue brush is a dry, thin plant which provides but one truly useful property, a cure for poison. Other than this, the plant is but a wiry bush to be avoided. These pretty blue flowers are often found in the Ascadian Isles and West Gash regions. This alchemist uses them for a different, perhaps unique purpose. When I defeat a difficult foe in battle, or feel that they should be remembered for some reason, I will lay a stoneflower petal at their feet. These petals are incredibly resilient, maintaining their color long after death. If the wind allows it, the petals will still be in place to remind me of events in later travels. Though, for the non-sentimental of you, it should be known that these aptly named petals can be used to restore one's strength. This is immensely important, as these flowers are the most abundant source of that effect. They can also fortify magicka and personality if one is so inclined. However, as a personal gift to your mentor, please leave enough for my peculiar purpose. A commonly visited site on the mainland of Morrowind is the capital city of Mournhold. Here, a lot of the native vegetation beyond the walls is foregone in preference of imported species for the gardens. Within the city bounds, there is little that could be considered wild or natural. With every royal family comes expensive and invasive plants. In the gardens of Mournhold, the exotic golden sedge is part of a selection of imported varieties grown throughout the capital city. These are prized by warriors for their aid in attack efficiency. They also offer swift swimming capabilities. In other provinces, horn lilies are used to cure temporary paralysis sickness. They can also restore strength and endurance, aiding in the healing process. These cacti are from some far-off desert, and if prepared carefully, their spines can be used as either a means of invisibility or a strong poison. One should be careful when retrieving them, and the use of chainmail gloves is suggested. Depending on the method of refinement, the meadow rye could either greatly aid or hinder one's speed of movement. That is about all there is to say for this feather-like plant. The Nurthfly stalks can be harvested to create potions of the exact same effects as the meadow rye. As such, they could be combined to slightly heighten one's speed at the cost of some health. This speed would aid greatly in traveling the labyrinthian sewers of Mournhold. Another fine line, the flowers of the noble sedge can either enhance one's athletic abilities or poison them, depending on combinations with other materials. Both the golden and noble sedge varieties belong to the plant family Cyperaceae. It is unknown why this is called scrib cabbage. It may be a common refuge plant for the creatures, or perhaps their favorite vegetation to forage. If consumed in liquid form, it can offer restoration and fortification of agility, much like the noble sedge. The pulp of the sweet barrel plant can cause paralysis and levitation, as well as health restoration and paralysis resistance. I imagine whoever first ate this had a wild period of intoxication. Who is Timsa? I have no nearly idea, but the flowers of this titular plant can be used to dispel magical effects, as well as offer paralysis resistance and endurance restoration. The cold island of Solstheim exists to the northwest of Vardenfell and has long been a contested space between the Nords and the Dunmer. Recent events have allowed for tentative trade agreements, such as the discovery of ebony deposits and rumors of werewolves that need hunting. The southern half of the island exists in a cool yet warmer environment than the northern. Here there are green grasses and vibrant trees, as well as common plants that grow around bases of trees and anthropogenic structures. The northern reaches of the island are completely encased in ice, covered in common blankets of snow, and are nearly devoid of vegetative life, save for the cold-tolerant trees and errant hollybush. In the snowfall, many creatures are camouflaged and easily missed. It's recommended that one drink night-eye potions in order to place themselves on an even playing field with the beasts that call this land home. Across the island of Solstheim grow a common berry plant known as holly. These provide a natural resistance to the elements when eaten, in the form of frost resistance and magical shielding. The ripened stage of belladonna is a boon to mages, restoring their magicka, heightening their abilities, and also warding off the spells of opposing mages. Unripened belladonna, although very bitter, provide the same effects as their ripened counterparts. At the top of Vitkald Peak exists the only known example of the wolfsbane, a cold-tolerant plant species. Its petals function similarly to those of the bittergreen on Vardenfell, offering restoration of intelligence and invisibility. Now that we have located and identified all the forageable reagents of the province, we will move into the hunt. There are many creatures who contain mystical properties through their natural vehicles. In order to gain those positive effects, one must often ingest some part of them. Hence, our hunt must begin. The hide of the giant mouth with legs, the allet, is commonly used as leather in Vardenfell, especially by Ashlanders. If used in alchemical pursuits, it can offer effects of poison resistance, telekinesis, and animal detection. The poison resistance comes most likely from the allet's natural ability to use poison in its bite. The animal detection makes sense as well, coming from the predator's hunting aspect. The telekinesis, though, is a rare effect and one that is fantastically useful for thieves and ne'er-do-wells, allowing them to move objects with their mind alone. The ash salts are crystals formed as ash deposits in crevices after blight storms. They are ironically one of two blight cure ingredients, the other being scrib jelly, making it hard to create yourself. However, it may just be necessary, as the blight is a terrible disease indeed. Bone meal is the result of grinding bones to dust. It is said to be specifically made from ground bones of a bone walker, a creature created as a flesh atronach from bits and pieces of attempted grave robbers. Though the ingredient is also found in the urns of the deceased within ancestral tombs. However one may acquire it, it can be used to restore agility and offer telekinesis. An unfortunate disease plagues certain residents of Vardenfell, especially around Red Mountain. They produce yellow ingredients, such as the corpus weepings. These are the hardened secretions of pus and other bodily fluids that fall from the necrotic bodies of those infected with corpus. The meat of the common mud crab is widely known for its sweet taste and the vague essence of seafood. If consumed, it offers a lightning shield and resistance to shock, two properties that aid it as a semi-aquatic creature during storms. It also offers restoration of luck. Like the skin of the Daedra, their hearts are similarly difficult to acquire. though they can be wrought from the bodies of Daedric enemies felled by one's hand. These hearts allow restoration of magicka as they are imbued with strong magical aura. They also offer fortification of endurance and enhanced night vision for some reason. Within the waters of Vvardenfell are the monstrous humanoid but tentacled beasts known as the dregs. If bested, their wax can be dug from between parts of their carapace. It's tough and pliable, and eating it would be like biting through a candle. However, if melted into a potion-making apparatus, it offers restoration and fortification of strength, two important effects for dungeon delvers. Throughout the ancient ruins and burial places of Vvardenfell are often restless spirits. These are sometimes hostile, protecting their local haunt. If banished, they leave behind a filmy substance called ectoplasm. This can be used in potions to fortify agility and allow animal life detection. One of the more common Daedric entities, the Flame Atronach, can be found around shrines and other dangerous locations. If bested in battle, the interiors of their bodies fall apart into a mound of small crystals known as fire salts. These can be used to make potions of fire shielding, frost resistance, and agility fortification. Frost salts precipitate from frost atronachs, much like fire salts from flame atronachs. They offer restoration of magicka, frost shielding, and resistance to fire. Both of these types of atronachs seem to mirror one another. Another bipedal creature, the guar, is commonly raised as a beast of burden, or for other means, such as a source of leather. Although this alchemist would never harm a tamed guar, there do exist wild varieties that attack on sight. Their hide can be used to fortify endurance, sensible for its purpose on their body. Also, it restores personality and can fortify luck. Across the island are large, dog-like beasts known as nixhounds. Although bug-like and containing hard carapaces, there does exist a fleshy interior. This meat is sweet and tender, and is often eaten by the island's inhabitants. Strangely enough, the blighted variety tends to carry more meat, although eating this is probably a bad decision. When used in potions, it can offer restoration and fortification of fatigue, as well as magic reflection and enchantment detection. Aside from the owlet and guar exists another bipedal lizard. At least visually, it seems to be closer related to the owlet, as it has no arms, only 2 legs and a large mouth. Much like the other creatures, the hide of these beasts are used for leather and clothing. In potion making, they offer speed fortification, common disease resistance, and night eye. The speed boost and night vision makes sense coming from the essence of a predator. There exist more bug-like creatures on the island called quama. If killed, they release a coagulated, wax-like substance from their mouths known as cuttle. This cuttle is useful for a few things, including poison resistance, water walking, and water breathing. The latter 2 effects are fantastic for explorers of underwater grottos, or those who want to bypass open stretches of ocean quickly. Also coming from the quama are egg broods placed throughout their caverns. The larger of these eggs are rich and nutritious, even more so than their smaller counterparts as they've had more time to develop. They are, however, quite bulky and thus difficult for trade routes to include in their brick-and-mortar stores, hence you will likely find none in shops. If used in potion making, they offer restoration of fatigue, frost shielding, and health fortification. One negative side effect, paralysis, may come through if mixed with certain other ingredients. This paralysis could be a defense mechanism of the egg, seeing as how the scribs which hatch from them also have a natural ability to paralyze their foes. In the Ascadian Isles are large, floating, jellyfish-like creatures known as netches. Both the female, the betty, and the male, the bull, have strong skin which can be used as leather in certain armors. It's strong yet flexible, and is prized by hunters and marksmen throughout the province. As far as alchemical use, the leather can be torn apart and mixed with other ingredients to yield potions which fortify endurance and intelligence. It can also be used to cure paralysis. In the waters of southern Vvardenfell, as well as in some grottos, there are clam-like creatures called collops. At a certain level of maturity, these collops produce pearlescent spheres. These minerals allow water breathing, which may account for how the collops gather oxygen to fulfill their biological needs. They can also offer dispelling of negative effects and resistance to common diseases of the island. Perhaps the most notorious beast to roam the volcanic wastes, the cliff racer, is to be shot on sight. Once felled, the plumes of the creature are often used in decoration, if not in alchemy. Strange note, but the cliff racer has wings that are mostly membranous, calling to question where the feather is coming from. In any case, these plumes are very useful, and often expensive as a result. They can be used to make potions of levitation, giving one the same abilities of their previous owner. Many large rats cross through the environments of Vvardenfell, as well as in basements and so on. Their meat is greasy and hard to chew. It must be seasoned a lot to taste good, but is still nutritious and not unheard of as a meal on the island. Used in alchemical pursuits, the meat contains properties of poison cure and resistance. This is great for those of higher status who would deign to protect themselves this way. In the waters of Vvardenfell are a very large species of slaughterfish, each owning razor-sharp teeth and haunting eyes. If one manages to kill them before being maimed themselves, They can harvest their blue-green scales. These can be used to restore endurance, but also to offer water walking abilities, or swift swim in the case that it's mixed with another ingredient. These last capabilities make sense somewhat, as the fish is an aquatic creature. However, the water walking ability seems a bit like a cruel joke. If one slaughterfish is killed, its hunter can drink its essence and render themselves immune as they hunt others. Perhaps the lowest form of Daedra from the Oblivion realms, the scamp takes on the form of an ugly satyr. They cannot be harmed by normal weaponry, but if felled, offer a useful ingredient. The dry, gross skin of a scamp is tough to harvest, as it requires the use of silver blades or better, due to its otherworldly qualities, but it can be used to cure paralysis and also restore strength and personality. If one cannot contain their latent evil tendencies, the death of a poor, defenseless scrib will produce a pink jelly. The gelatin is sour at best and requires one to commit unforgivable sins in order to acquire it. However, it does offer 4 beneficial properties. These include fortification of willpower, something the murderer will need in order to prevent a future mishap, cures to poison, cures to blight disease, and further restoration of willpower aid to prevent yet another atrocity. Should they take their crime even further, scrib jerky is a commonly described practical food, only when a traveler can find nothing else. They are sun-dried and chewy. With each bite, the screams of the scrib echo in the mind. Potions made from this ingredient restore fatigue as well as fortify it, and there is also the boon of swift swimming. These are all necessary for the criminal, as they'll need to escape the wrath of the gods for their heinous actions. When looking at the anatomy of the shock beetle, there's a resinous substance between the segments of their carapace that can be harvested for use in glue and manufacturing. If consumed in liquid mixtures, it can offer health and speed fortification, ironic since the shock is a very slow-moving creature. The quama eggs are perhaps the most common type of food on the island, and are harvested from the hives of the quama creatures. These bug-like beings create caverns and deposit eggs throughout them, allowing the eggs to gather nutrients from the soil as they grow. The small quama egg has had a bit less time to grow than the large, but are easier to deal with when packing meals for the road. They offer fatigue restoration, but that is all. Throughout the island of Vardenfell are caves which host vampiric spawn. When defeated, their pure white eyes will roll back, and their skin will begin to disintegrate into dust. If collected, this rare material is best sold, although the purchaser may have nefarious intentions. It's said to cause vampirism, but some have apparently tasted it in the name of science, only to find themselves feeling healthier than ever. I recommend against this strategy. Much like with the other Atronach salts, this is a crystalline ash left behind from storm Atronachs, as well as winged twilights, who also hail from the realms of Oblivion. When consumed raw, it will restore one's magicka stores. If brewed into a stronger draught, it offers a boosted restoration, as well as spell absorption, allowing further storage of ability. Used in 6th House rituals, this meat seems to have come from the many poor souls who have contracted corpus disease on Red Mountain. Whether it sloughs off naturally or is purposefully removed is a mystery, and one this alchemist does not wish to solve. This bizarre selection of meat comes from macabre experiments with necromancy and Daedra worship, such as in the case of Palansour, where a group of bandits toyed with Daedric summoning scrolls. The beast got out of control and killed all but one smuggler, rending their flesh as they went. The surviving smuggler was then forced to cross-dress for the amusement of these beasts. How do I know of this exactly? Well, the search for ingredients can take you to odd places. Don't worry though, I did remove the threat and allow the smuggler to escape. Hopefully they learn their lesson. Within the sewers of Mournhold are goblins, as well as their trusty steeds, the Durzogs. When killed, they provide a gamey meat. This meat is said to damage your magicka stores, but fear not. It will only enhance your dexterity and raw power. Oh, and it can blind you. This is ironic coming from a creature with multiple sets of eyes. On the island of Solstheim exist many bears suited for the cold climate. The pelts that offer this ability are often used in armor making. In terms of alchemical use, they can offer strength fortification, common disease resistance, and night eye, a favorite of any predator species. Wild hogs roam the island as well, usually tamed by small blue elven creatures known as reeklings. These beasts, along with many others on the island, have developed a natural resistance to the harsh weather conditions. This also translates into their alchemical effects, meaning an adventurer can similarly use their leather to provide protection in both physical and magical means. In the dark ice caves of Solstheim are a scary surprise. Large creatures that seem to be the grisly mix of elephant and giant roam the shadows. If somehow defeated, the eyeball of the Grawl can be plucked out. Living in caves, the Grawl have incredible dark vision, and this can be found in their alchemical properties. The unfortunate Draugr of the island can be put down in merciful displays of combat. If killed, their bodies produce disgusting excretions of what is known as grave tar. This material offers frost resistance as well as fortification of fatigue, allowing one to travel through the difficult climate. This ingredient is quite peculiar. Only Spriggans encountered by an adventurer on one of their first excursions will be carrying it. It is unknown whether these weaker spriggans are a different species comprised of the material, but more hardened travelers will never find it by defeating their analogous tree spawn. Experiments with this material show that, along with the hollyberries, it's one of the only ingredients that can produce a poison of weakness to fire, which makes sense as both ingredients are derived from flammable plants. Hunted for subsistence, the narwhal-like horkers are generally a peaceable species that roam the frigid waters of northern Solstheim. Their tusks can be ground and used in potions to detect animals, which is great for hunting parties on long journeys. Like with the brown bear varieties, the pelts of the snow bear can be used to create armors with which to shield oneself from the brutal weather of the island. The alchemical effects are exactly the same as their southern counterpart, and, as we will see, the same as the pelts of wolves as well. Similar to the snow bears, the pelt of the snow wolf can also be made into armor. There are many common beasts of Tamriel that can also produce potions of night-eye, meaning that the hunters on this island can all spot prey from a mile away. The common wolf pelts are identical in effect to the snow wolf variety and can also be made into armor. The Nords living here must use any means necessary in order to survive the difficult climate. Apart from the usual natural materials one comes to expect in the field of alchemy, there are also malleable minerals and such that offer unique effects. Whoever tested these and discovered their qualities should be honored. Alas, we have no written documentation on these exploits. Diamonds are a very rare resource in Vvardenfell, and there is only one known diamond mine, the Abalin mine. Apart from that private endeavor, diamonds can be found in Dwemer ruins as loot from their ancient plundering. If used in potions, they offer invisibility, magic reflection, and detection of keys. These diamonds are a thief's best friend. Unlike the diamonds, there are 0 emerald mines on the island. These can only be purchased or found in Dwemer ruins. Apparently, the Dwemer had extensive underground trade routes and were able to find these gems elsewhere. If consumed raw, a heroic feat, they offer fortification of magic. If brewed carefully with other ingredients, this effect can be strengthened and restoration of health can be added. Do be careful though, as their tough material can often clog alembics and lead to explosive results. The island of Vvardenfell plays host to many mines, most of them containing mass stores of ebony. Outside of Nirn, this material is actually made from the hardened heartwood of trees in the Diosporos genus. Here, it is thought to be hardened magma from the activity of Red Mountain. Some more religious folk say this material is the hardened blood of the god Lorkhan, whose heart was thrown here in the Dawn era. These mines are imperially controlled, but smuggling does exist on the island. In fact, one can sell it directly to a regular apothecary with no issue. Even the imperial appointed guard will ignore the sale. This material is also used in armor and weapons due to its durability. For the alchemist, ebony offers cures to poison, frost shielding, and restoration of speed. Due to all of these tangible and intangible qualities, the ebony trade is extremely profitable. Beyond Quama, diamond, and ebony mines, there exist mines of a material called malachite, commonly known as glass. Formed in a similar way to ebony, this mineral can often be found in the caverns under Red Mountain. Although not as strong as ebony, this material is also used in forging lightweight armor and weaponry. It also has a better weight to gold ratio, making it a very expensive and profitable material as well. If secured, it can be used to make potions of fire shielding, which no doubt owes to the heat of its origins. Much like the emeralds, the rubies have no mines on Vvardenfell and are found by either raiding Dwemer ruins or purchasing them from apothecaries. They can be used to make potions of feather, allowing one to carry more burdens. They can also restore one's intelligence should someone have used a dastardly spell on them, or if they contracted a certain disease, such as the chills or even Ashwoe blight. Deep in the Dwemer ruins remain the scraps of unfinished projects. This metal is also found from defeating the ever-moving automatons left protecting the location. Only this one Dwemer relic seems to be allowed in common trade due to its apparent lack of value in academic circles. The others, including cups, bowls, etc., which could be argued to be scrap metal themselves, are indeed illegal if smuggled. If eaten raw, this material will drain one's health as it is sharp and jagged. If melted and mixed sparingly into concoctions, it can offer lightning shielding, resistance to shock, and restoration of intelligence. The shock resistance is a boon of this material, as it prevents the automatons from short-circuiting. The Dwemer were in fact a highly intelligent people. This very rare material grows under the capital city of Mournhold and is primarily used to create strong armor and weaponry, as its alchemical effects are often seen in more common ingredients. These armaments are quite durable and well worth the effort to create. This material, Stalrim, translating from Icelandic to mean steel frost, is a magical ice that exists to protect remains from disturbances, namely grave robbers. If you disturb it with a Nordic pickaxe, you can use the resultant loot to create armor and weapons. It can also be used to make potions of health restoration and frost resistance, but there are much cheaper ingredients to do this with. Hence, one should allow old bones to rest. There are some ingredients that are simply unobtainable by regular means unless one is willing to travel. Even still, some purveyors of the alchemical arts are quite stingy with their sources. As this is the case, there are many ingredients that can only be purchased directly from shops, smuggled out of reach of the Imperials, or by random loot shipment. Bloat, found in various apothecaries of Vardenfell, offers fortification of intelligence and willpower, as well as animal detection. Breaking character for a moment, this plant is supposed to grow from a plant in dark and wet locations, most likely in caves, but the harvestable nodes were never placed in-game. This means you can only purchase them from shops. This is what they looked like in the construction set. Alright, back to our adventure. Ow. Bread, a common product of other regions, is only to be found as loot or purchased in the region of Vardenfell. If one knows the recipe with salt rice flour, it is actually quite easy to bake it, especially if they're skilled in flame magic. But alas, who has the time? The only known restocking salesman of bread in Vardenfell is Agning, a Nord who runs a tavern in Ebonheart called Six Fishes. Perhaps he has the best trade connection in terms of bread. In my notes, I've listed this as being plant and fungal, as it requires yeast to grow. It only offers restoration of fatigue, an effect commonly seen in staple foods. This ingredient, the Daedra skin, is very rare and can only be found by visiting an apothecary, any of which are very protective of their sources. They offer fortification of strength, swift swimming, and cures to common disease. An entity that creates medicines, hiding their resources from the public that could definitely make use of them. Never seen that before. These are the blackened hearts of an Ashghoul, a poor individual who has been corrupted by the nightmarish diseases of Red Mountain. Breaking character again, it's unfortunately not coded into the game as being such and only found at vendors. Before traveling to Mournhold and acquiring some golden sedge, it is impossible to find another ingredient with which to make use of the attack fortification property. However, they can be used to cure poison if mixed with another good reagent. Grave dust is a strange and rare material, thought to be the refined form of bone meal. This process must be very secretive indeed, as the material is only accessible by purchase from certain apothecaries on Vardenfell. If used in potions, it can offer restoration of endurance and cures to common diseases. The exotic drug called moon sugar grows in cane grasses native to Elsewhere, home of the Khajiit. In Morrowind, which is part of the Empire, it is outlawed due to its narcotic effects. It is still smuggled for high amounts of coin and can be found in many locations on Vardenfell. Of its native properties, one can fortify their speed or dispel negative potion effects. However, when mixed into the stronger drug known as skooma, it has far enhanced effects. Those we will describe a little later on. If one is needing a quick pick-me-up, they can always travel to the island of Solstheim and visit Uncle Sweetshare. This Nord is very giving, and his gifts are always well received by friends. Also, he sings along as he offers them to you. How kind. Resin comes from various plants of Vardenfell and is used to seal and cure both chitin and bone mold armaments. It may also be used in construction of furniture and even homes. When brewed as a potion, it offers restoration of health and speed, as well as common disease resistance. The restoration of health, and specifically disease resistance, could relate to how trees put out resin in order to harden and protect certain parts of their body from fungal and insectoid pathogens. This strange ingredient is described as tasting like cheese, and comes from different beetle-like creatures on the island, most notably the Shulk of the Grazelands. However, the adventurer cannot harvest it from the beetles, as the method to do so is a closely kept secret. As such, it must be purchased from natives who understand the methods best. This material offers fatigue boons, as well as feather and telekinesis, two great effects for thieves. Slowed soap is created from crushing the early grub-like forms of the slowed race. Although this alchemist would like to give them the benefit of the doubt, the ilk of Nagasta are often a despicable and evil race, devoid of any mercy toward men and mer. Hence, none should feel bad for harvesting this ingredient. The slowed were mostly wiped out in the past, and so the breeding locations are kept secret by harvesters, meaning the common adventurer must either purchase the soap from them or steal it from elsewhere. Their primary effect, draining personality, probably comes from the immoral owner's own essence. The other effects include restoration and fortification of agility, as well as a fire shield. These connections, if there are any, are just as enigmatic as the slowed race themselves. The final, and perhaps most confusing ingredient in our Morrowind journey, is meteor slime. This mysterious ingredient heavily resembles scrib jelly, even as far as the alchemical effects go. However, it is a renewable resource coming from this plant that Jabasha is slowly uncovering the science behind. Dubbed Charles, this test subject somehow secretes the jelly-like substance from its leaves. Once Jabasha understands the mechanisms, the scribes of Vardenfell will have one less thing to worry about, as he will no doubt begin selling the material in bulk. Now that we've covered all of the alchemical reagents to be found in Vardenfell, let us briefly look over the multiple alcoholic beverages of the province. This beverage can only be found in old 6th House dens and is not worth drinking in the slightest, though it does sell for 1500 gold, so it's worth looting if seen. This brandy is imported from Cyrodiil as its name would suggest. This most likely comes from farms in the West Weald, as that is the alcohol capital in the Imperial Province. It has only positive effects, fortifying willpower and endurance massively. Unknown to some, Flynn is also an import from Cyrodiil. This liquor can be used to fortify one's willpower and strength, and is a favorite of adventurers that cannot decide what loot to leave behind. Grief is a common comberry brandy, and offers strength fortification at the cost of agility. It's great for a quick and dirty bar fight, a favorite of retired guards. Mazte is Vardenfell's very own beer. It's made from fermented salt rice and is also quite tasty compared to brews of other regions. It fortifies strength at the loss of willpower and intelligence. This drink is best shared in good company, on warm nights under a blanket of stars. Sheen is also made from comberry, but is a wine instead of a brandy. It fortifies endurance at the cost of intelligence. Skooma is the refined form of moon sugar, an illegal drug under the Empire. Many people lose their livelihoods to the concoction. Because of these reasons, most salespeople in Morrowind will not even barter with you should they smell it on your person. Sujama is a Dunmerry liquor made from comberry, barley, and lemon. It's great tasting and fortifies one's strength by incredible amounts. However, it also drains their intelligence for a full minute, a compounding effect with each round. Although only 7 of these bottles exist in total, they're legendary for their exquisite and mysterious taste. No one can place a finger on what ingredients were combined to form it. As a result, each bottle goes for 500 gold. I know this is not a beverage, but in order to keep my folios orderly, I need to place it within another section. The Telvanni bug musk is a very useful cologne. It's made from the scent glands of certain bug-like creatures on the island, and when sprayed on one's person, it produces a surprisingly enjoyable scent. This allows for a temporary enhancement to one's own personality, affecting their relationships with neighbors and strangers alike. Now, if only the Telvanni would reveal its method of creation. So now you know where and how to obtain all the reagents within the province of Morrowind and surrounding areas. However, that is only step 1 of the alchemical process. Next, you must acquire the apparatus. There are a few ways to do this, and the choice is yours. We've discussed how to use these tools already, but we've not discussed the topic of wartcraft, or the process by which the effects of reagents are discovered through simple taste testing. This, although interesting, is less recommended, especially considering your education today. As an example, I'll brew here a few potions, including all manner of element shielding, levitation, and light production. The mixtures are simple to follow and should be noted if you'd like to use them in the near future. As you can see, alchemy is an extremely rewarding field of study. So much so that there are those even more informed than I. For example, we can visit a Bel Credit in Valenvarian, an old Dunmer stronghold. She is the most talented trainer of alchemy in the province, and one from which this mentor has learned a great deal. She is so talented, in fact, that she has been written into books, something we can discuss now. There are 5 books related to alchemy in the region. 3 of them are strictly non-fiction, 1 is questionable, and the other is definite fiction. We will begin with the non-fiction stories. The Alchemist's Formulary, by an anonymous author. Healer's Recipes. Healers should all know the recipes for the following popular potions. Fortunately, in most cases, the ingredients are common and cheaply obtained. To restore health to the afflicted and wounded, combine in equal parts 2 or more of the following cheap and common ingredients: marshmarrow, wick-wheat, corkbulb root, and salt rice. Marshmarrow is an important crop of the Ascadian Isles, but it also grows wild in the Grazelands and on Azura's coast. Wick-wheat is a wild ashland grain that grows in the Grazelands. Corkbulb grows best in the Ascadian Isles. Most salt rice comes from southeastern Morrowind, but there are also some new and prospering farms and plantations in the Ascadian Isles. Salt rice occasionally grows wild in the Grazelands and on Azura's coast. To restore fatigue after heavy exertion, combine 2 or more of the following: crab meat, bread, small kwama egg, and chokeweed. Crab meat is taken from the mud crab, commonly found along all coasts. Bread in Morrowind is usually baked from salt rice flour. Kwama eggs are harvested from egg mines and sold everywhere in Morrowind. The smaller eggs retain properties lost in later states of gestation. Chokeweed is a tough shrub growing in the rocky highlands of the West Gash. To cure common diseases, combine grave dust and green lichen. Grave dust is spirit-affinitive dust taken from remains buried in consecrated ground. Green lichen is a hardy primitive plant that grows in the Ascadian Isles and Azura's coast. To restore magicka for spellcasting, combine comberry and frost salts. Comberry is a bitter berry used to make wines. It grows mainly in the Ascadian Isles. Frost salts, by contrast, are rare and expensive. These crystalline compounds precipitate from elemental frost in solution. Such residues may be collected from the remains of frost atronachs that have been banished from the mortal plane. Travelers' recipes. Pilgrims and travelers will find the following inexpensive recipes of particular interest. Feather reduces the weary traveler's burdens and can be gained from heather and scuttle. Heather is a low evergreen shrub of the Ascadian Isles, known for its small pinkish-purple flowers. Scuttle, Vardenfell's favorite local dish, is similar to cheese and made from the flesh of local beetles. Levitation can be produced from any two of the following ingredients: trauma root, racer plumes, and coda flowers. A thick, bitter-tasting root of the trauma shrub grows in the Ashlands, Molag Amur, and Red Mountain regions. Racer plumes are plucked from dead cliff racers. Coda flowers are collected from the primitive draggletail plant of the Bitter Coast. The power of water breathing is handy for travelers. A potion may be made from 2 or more of the following ingredients: luminous russula, hackalow leaf, and quamacuddle. Luminous russula is a squat, mottled brown and green toadstool mushroom of the Bitter Coast region. Hackalow leaf is a succulent leaf of the Grazelands, prized for its taste and its roborative powers. Quamacuddle is a tough, waxy substance that comes from sacs in the mouths of quama. Adventurers' recipes. Unfortunately, the potions most favored by adventurers require the most rare and expensive ingredients. There are exceptions, like the easy and affordable recipe for Fire Shield, but most potions require at least one ingredient with high cost in coin or blood. Fire Shield potions can be made from comberry and slode soap. Comberry is the bitter berry of the Ascadian Isles. Slode soap is a waxy substance made from the immature, non-sentient forms of the slode. Slode soap is not expensive, but is only rarely stocked by apothecaries or alchemists, and cannot be collected locally. An adventurer can fortify his strength with a potion made from ash yams and dregwax. Ash yam is a tough tuberous root vegetable common to the Ascadian Isles region. Dregwax is a tough, waxy substance scraped from dreg shells. Dreg are powerful aquatic creatures, and hunting them for their hides and wax is a dangerous occupation. Invisibility, one of the most prized effects of potions, can only be made from crushed diamonds and bittergreen petals. Bittergreen is a red flowering plant growing in the Red Mountain region. Diamonds, on the other hand, are very rare and expensive, and usually must be purchased from fine alchemists. This book is a decent introduction to common potions to be made in the region. However, there are a couple mistakes. For example, the anonymous author states that smaller quama eggs retain more magical properties, positing that they are lost in later stages of gestation, implying the large quama eggs would have less alchemical potential. However, this is actually backwards, as we've discussed. The larger eggs do take more time to grow, but in fact, this allows them to soak up more nutrients. Perhaps this book was written before that was common knowledge. We all start somewhere. There's one more glaring error in the book. It states that bittergreen is a flowering plant with red petals, growing in the Red Mountain region. Either they are colorblind or the blight storms filled them with confusion. These plants are indeed a mixture of purple and yellow, not red as this book reports. No, I've not been tested for color blindness. Why do you ask? The Cake and the Diamond by Ethan Muindle. I was in the Rat in the Pot, a foreigner corner club in Aldrun, talking to my fellow rats when I first saw the woman. Now, Breton women are fairly common in the Rat in the Pot. As a breed, they seem inclined to wander far from their perches in High Rock. Old Breton women, however, are not so migratory, and the wizened old biddy drew attention to herself, wandering about the room talking to everyone. Nimloth and Odiad were at their usual places, drinking their usual stuff. Odiad was showing off a prize he had picked up in some illicit manner. A colossal diamond, large as a baby's hand, and clear as spring water. I was admiring it when I heard the creaking of old bones behind me. "Good day to you, friends," said the old woman. "My name is Abel Cridit, and I am in need of financial assistance to facilitate my transportation to Aldredania." "You'll want to see the temple for charity," said Nimloth curtly. "I am not looking for charity," said Abel. "I'm looking to barter services." "Don't make me sick, old woman," laughed Odiad. "Did you say your name was Abel Cridit?" I asked. "Are you related to Abel Cridit, the High Rock alchemist?" "Closely related," she said, with a cackle. "We're the same person. Perhaps I could prepare you a potion in exchange for gold? I notice that you have in your possession a very fine diamond." The magical qualities of diamonds are boundless. Sorry, old woman. I ain't giving it up for magic. It was trouble enough stealing this one, said Odiad. I've got a fence who will trade it for gold. But your fence will demand a certain percentage, will he not? What if I could give you a potion of invisibility in exchange? In return for the diamond, you could have the means to steal many more. A very fair exchange of services, I would say. It would be, but I have no gold to give you, said Odiad. I'll take what remains of the diamond after I've made the potion, said Abel. If you took it to the Mages Guild, you'd have to supply all the other ingredients and pay for it as well. But I learned my craft in the wild, where no potion makers existed to dissolve diamonds into dust. When you must do it all by hand, by simple skill, you are blessed with remnants those full potion makers at the guild simply swallow up. That sounds all very nice, said Nimloth, but how do we know your potion's going to work? If you make one potion, take the rest of Odiad's diamond, and leave, we won't know until you've gone whether the potion works or not. Ah, trust is so rare these days, sighed Abel. I suppose I could make 2 potions for you, and there'd still be a little left of the diamond for me. Not a lot, but perhaps enough to get me to Ald Redania. Then you could try the first potion right here and now, and see if you're satisfied or not. But, I interjected, you could make one potion that works and one that doesn't, and take more of the diamond. She could even give you a slow-acting poison, and by the time she got to Ald Redania, you'd be dead. Bleedin' Kinnerith, you Dunmer are suspicious. I'll hardly have any diamond left, but I could make 2 potions of 2 doses each, so you can satisfy yourself that the potion works and has no negative effects. If you still don't trust me, come along with me to my table and witness my craft if you'd like. So it was decided that I would accompany Abel back to her table where she had all her traveling bags full of herbs and minerals, to make certain she was not making 2 different potions. It took nearly an hour of preparation, but she kindly allowed me to finish her half-filled flagon of wine while I watched her work. Splintering the diamond and powdering the pieces required the bulk of the time. Over and over again she waved her gnarled hands over the gem, intoning ancient enchantments, breaking the facets of the stone into smaller and smaller pieces. Separately she made pastes of minced bittergreen, crushed red bulbs of Delarco Spey, and driblets of Siciliani oil. I finished the wine. Old woman, I finally said with a sigh, how much longer is this going to take? I'm getting tired of watching you work. The Mages Guild has fooled the populace into thinking alchemy is a science, she said, but if you're tired, rest your eyes. My eyes closed, seemingly of their own volition. But there had been something in that wine, something that made me do what she asked. I think I'll make up the potion as cakes. It's much more potent that way. Now, tell me, young man, what will your friends do once I give them the potion? Mug you in the street afterwards to retrieve the rest of the diamond, I said simply. I didn't want to tell the truth, but there it was. I thought so, but I wanted to be certain. You may open your eyes now. I opened my eyes. Abel had made a small presentation on a wooden platter, 2 small cakes and a silver cutting knife. Pick up the cakes and bring them to the table, said Abel, and don't say anything except to agree with whatever I say. I did as I was told. It was a curious sensation. I didn't really mind being her puppet. Of course, in retrospect I resent it, but it seemed perfectly natural at the time to obey without question. Abel handed the cakes to Odiad, and I dutifully verified that both cakes were made the same way. She suggested that he cut one of the cakes in half, and she would take one piece and he'd take the other, just so he would know that they worked and weren't poisoned. Odiad thought it was a good idea and used Abel's knife to cut the cake. Abel took the piece on the left and popped it into her mouth. Odiad took the piece on the right and swallowed it more cautiously. Abel and all the bags she was carrying vanished from sight almost instantly. Nothing happened to Odiad. Why did it work for the witch and not for me? Cried Odiad. Because the diamond dust was only on the left-hand side of the blade, said the old alchemist through me. I felt her control lessening as the distance grew, and she hurried invisibly down the dark Aldrin street away from the rat in the pot. We never found Abel Critted or the diamond. Whether she completed her pilgrimage to Ald Redania is anyone's guess. The cakes had no effect except to give Odiad a bad case of droops that lasted for nearly a week. In this story, Aethan Muendel recounts the events of a visit from Abel Critted. Yes, indeed, the same Abel Critted we visited in Valenvarian. Using her methods of alchemy, she slyly tricked the thieves into allowing her unburdened passage on her journey. The disease called droops that she placed upon Odiad is in fact a real condition one can acquire from different Quama creatures that carry it. Overall, this is a great story, and one that shows the boons of proper alchemical knowledge. As they still have an eye out for old Abel, this alchemist humbly requests that you keep our friend's location a secret. This book, written by Hardin the Herbalist, gives a brief overview of a few, seemingly randomly selected, reagents to be found throughout the realm. Of note to us is only the fire fern, for which Hardin has this to say. Fire fern, a perennial herb, is native to the province of Morrowind. The flowers are inconspicuous and often hidden. The glossy evergreen foliage and blossoms are resistant to conditions of high heat and bright light. A petal from this plant placed under the adventurer's tongue will provide protection from heat and fire of the lava pits and thermal streams around Dagoth-Ur. A Game at Dinner by an Anonymous Spy. Forward from the publisher. The history behind this letter is almost as interesting and dark as the story it tells. The original letter to the mysterious Danain was copied and began circulating around the Ashlands of Vardenfell a few months ago. In time, a print found its way to the mainland and Prince Lalu Helseth's palace outside Almalexia. While the reader may conclude after reading this letter that the prince would be furious about such a work, impugning his highness with great malevolence, quite the reverse was true. The prince and his mother, Queen Baranzaya, had it privately printed into bound copies and sent to libraries and booksellers throughout Morrowind. As matter of the record, the prince and the queen have not officially stated whether the letter is a work of pure imagination or based on an actual occurrence. The House Dress has publicly denounced the work, and indeed, no one named Danain, despite the suggestions in the letter, has ever been linked to the house. We leave the reader to interpret the letter as he or she believes. Nearest Gone, Publisher. Dark Liege Danain. You asked for a detailed description of my experience last night and the reasons for my plea to House Dress for another assignment. I hope I have served you well in my capacity as informant in the court of Prince Helseth, a man who I have stated in many previous reports could teach Molag Bal how to scheme. As you know, I've spent nearly a year now working my way into his inner circle of advisors. He was in need of friendship when he first arrived in Morrowind, and eagerly took to me and a few others. Still, he was disinclined to trust any of us, which is perhaps not surprising, given his tenuous position in Morrowind society. For your unholiness's recollection, the prince is the eldest son of Baranzaya, who was once the queen of Morrowind, and once the queen of the High Rock Kingdom of Wayrest. At the death of her husband, Prince Helseth's stepfather, King Eadwire, there is a power struggle between the prince and Eadwire's daughter, the Princess Elisana. Though details of what transpired are imperfect, it is clear that Elisana won the battle and became queen, banishing Helseth and Baranzaya. Baranzaya's only other child, Morgaya, had already left court to marry and become queen of the Somerset Isle kingdom of Firsthold. Baranzaya and Helseth crossed the continent to return to Morrowind only last year. They were well received by Baranzaya's uncle, our current king, Lalu Athan Lethan, who had taken the throne after Baranzaya's abdication more than 40 years ago. Baranzaya made it clear that she had no designs on reclaiming the throne, but merely to retire to her family estates. Helseth, as you know, has lingered in the royal court, and many have whispered that while he lost the throne of Wayrest, he does not intend to lose the throne of Morrowind at Lethan's death. I've kept your unholiness informed about the prince's movements, meetings, and plots, as well as the names and characters of his other advisors. As you may recall, I've often thought that I was not the only spy in Helseth's court. I told you before that a particular Dunmer counselor of Helseth looked like a fellow I had seen in the company of Tholar Sarioni, the archcanon of the Tribunal Temple. Another, a young Nord woman, has been verified to visit the Imperial Fortress in Balmora. Of course, in their cases, they might well have been on Helseth's own business, but I couldn't be certain. I had begun to think myself paranoid as the prince himself, when I found myself doubting the sincere loyalty of the prince's chamberlain, Beverages, a Breton who had been in his employ since his days in the court of Wayrest. That is the background on the night last night. Yesterday morning I received a curt invitation to dine with the prince. Based only on my own paranoia, I dispatched one of my servants, who is a good and loyal servant of House Dress, to watch the palace and report back anything unusual. Just before dinner he returned and told me what he had witnessed. A man cloaked in rags had been given entrance to the palace, and had stayed there for some time. When he left, my servant saw his face beneath the cloak. An alchemist of infamous repute, said to be a leading supplier of exotic poisons. A fine observer, my servant also noticed that the alchemist entered the palace, smelling of wickweed, bittergreen, and something alien and sweet. When he left, he was odorless. He had come to the same conclusion I did. The prince had procured ingredients to prepare a poison. Bittergreen alone is deadly when eaten raw, but the other ingredients suggested something far deeper. As your unholiness can doubtless imagine, I went to dinner that night prepared for any eventuality. All of Prince Helseth's other counselors were in attendance, and I noticed that all were slightly apprehensive. Of course, I imagined that I was in a nest of spies, and all knew of the prince's mysterious meeting. It is just as likely that some knew of the alchemist's visit, while others were simply concerned by the nature of the prince's invitation. And still others merely unconsciously adopted the tense disposition of their fellow, better-informed counselors. The prince, however, was in fine mettle, and soon had everyone relaxed and at ease. At 9, we were all ushered into his dining hall where the feast had been laid out. And what a feast! Honeyed gore apples, fragrant stews, roasts in various blood sauces, and every variety of fish and fowl expertly and ostentatiously prepared. Crystal and gold flagons of wine, Flynn, Sheen, and Mazte were at our seats to be savored as appropriate with each course. As tantalizing as the aromas were, it occurred to me that in such a maze of spices and flavors, a discreet poison would be undetectable. Throughout the meal, I maintained the illusion of eating the food and drinking the liquor, but I was surreptitious and swallowed nothing. Finally, the plates and food were cleared from the table, and a tureen of spicy broth was placed in the center of the banquet. The servant who brought it then retired, closing the banquet hall door behind him. "It smells divine, my prince," said the Marquioness Kolgar, the Nord woman, "but I cannot eat another thing." "Your Highness," I added, feigning a tone of friendliness and slight intoxication, "you know that everyone at this table would gladly die to put you on the throne of Morrowind, but is it really necessary that we gorge ourselves to death?" The others at the table agreed with appreciative groans. Prince Helseth smiled. "I swear by Vermina the Gifter, my dark liege, even you have never seen a smile such as this one." Ironic words. You see, an alchemist visited me today, as some of you already doubtless know. He showed me how to make a marvelous poison and its antidote. A most potent potion, excellent for my purposes. No restoration spell will aid you once you've digested it. Only the antidote in the tureen will save you from certain death, and what a death from what I've heard. I'm eager to see if the effects are all that the alchemist promised. It should be horribly painful for the afflicted, but quite entertaining. No one said a word. I could feel my heart beating hard in my chest. "Your Highness," said Alarat, the Dunmer I suspected of alliance with the temple, "have you poisoned someone at this table?" "You are very astute, Alarat," said Prince Helseth, looking about the table, eyeing each of his advisors carefully. "Little wonder I value your counsel, as indeed I value all in this room. It would be perhaps easiest for me to say who I haven't poisoned. I haven't poisoned any who serve but one master, any whose loyalty to me is sincere. I haven't poisoned any person who wants to see King Helseth on the throne of Morrowind. I haven't poisoned anyone who isn't a spy for the Empire, the Temple, the House of Telvanni, the House of Redoran, the House of Indoril, the House of Dress. Your Unholiness," he looked directly at me at his last words. "I know that in certainty. My face is practiced at keeping my thoughts from showing, but I immediately thought of every secret meeting I've had, every coded message I sent to you in the house, my dark liege. What could he know? What could he, even without knowing, suspect?" I felt my heart beating even faster. Was it fear or poison? I couldn't speak, certain as I was that my voice would betray my calm facade. Those loyal to me who wish harm on my enemies may be wondering how I can be certain that the poison has been ingested. Is it possible that the guilty party, or dare I say parties, were suspicious and merely pretended to eat and drink tonight? Of course, but even the craftiest of pretenders would have to raise a glass to his or her lips and put empty forks or spoons in their mouths to play the charade. The food, you see, was not poisoned. The cups and cutlery were. If you did not partake out of fear, you're poisoned just the same, and sadly, missed an excellent roast. Sweat beaded on my face, and I turned from the prince so he could not see. My fellow advisors, all of them, were frozen in their seats. From the Marquioness Kolgar, white with fear, to Kima and Neb, visibly shaking. From the furrowed, angry brow of Alarat to the statue-like stare of Beverages. I couldn't help thinking then, could the prince's entire counselorship be comprised of nothing but spies? Was there any person at the table loyal? And then I thought, what if I were not a spy myself? Would I trust Helseth to know that? No one knows better than his advisors both the depth of the prince's paranoia and the utter implacability of his ambition. If I were not a spy for the House Dress, even then would I be safe? Could a loyalist be poisoned because of a not-so-innocent misjudgment? The others must have been thinking the same. Loyalists and spies alike. While my mind whirled, I could hear the prince's voice, addressing all assembled. The poison acts quickly. If the antidote is not taken within 1 minute from now, there will be a death at the table. I couldn't decide whether I had been poisoned or not. My stomach ached, but I reminded myself it might have been the result of sitting at a sumptuous banquet and not partaking. My heart shook in my chest, and a bitter taste like trauma root stung my lips. Again, was it fear or poison? "These are the last words you will hear if you are disloyal to me," said Prince Helseth, still smiling that damn smile as he watched his advisors squirming in their seats. "Take the antidote and live." Could I believe him? I thought of what I knew of the prince and his character. Would he kill a self-confessed spy at his court, or would he rather send the vanquished back to his masters? The prince was ruthless, but either possibility was within his manner. Surely the theatricality of this whole dinner was meant to be a presentation to instill fear. What would my ancestors say if I joined them after sitting at a table, eventually dying of poison? What would they say if I took the antidote, confessing my allegiance to you in the House Dress, and was summarily executed? And I confess I thought of what you might do to me even after I was dead. I had grown so lightheaded and filled with my own thoughts that I didn't see Burgess jump from his seat. I was only suddenly aware that he had the tureen in his hands and was gulping down the liquid within. There were guards all around, though I never noticed them entering. "Burgess," said Prince Helseth, still smiling, "you have spent some time at Ghostgate." "House Redoran?" "You didn't know?" Burgess laughed sourly. "No, House. I report to your stepsister, the Queen of Wayrest. I've always been in her employ. By Akatosh, you poisoned me because you thought I was working for some damnable dark elves?" "You're half right," said the prince. "I didn't guess who you were working for, or even that you were a spy. But you're also wrong about me poisoning you. You poisoned yourself when you drank from the tureen. Your Unholiness, you don't need to hear how Burgess died. I know that you have seen much over the many, many years of your existence, but you truly don't want to know. I wish I could erase the memory of his agonies from my own mind." The council was dismissed shortly after. I do not know if Prince Helseth knows or suspects that I too am a spy. I do not know how many others that night, last night, were as close as I was from drinking from the tureen before Burgess did. I only know that if the prince does not suspect me now, he will. I cannot win at the games he mastered long ago at the court of Wayrest, and I beg your Unholiness, my dark liege Danain, to use your influence in the House Dress and dismiss your loyal servant from this charge. Publisher's note. Of course, the anonymous writer's signature has not been on any reprint of the letter since the original. This story was very interesting concerning a dinner with Lalu Helseth and his advisors. Some say it is fact, while others call fiction. Interesting still is the fact that Helseth and his mother had the story published broadly throughout Tamriel, perhaps to scare away any would-be assassins or betrayers. Now we should go over a few inconsistencies. Although listed, there is no Imperial fortress in Balmora. Does this reference the House Lalu's headquarters? There is no certainty. More importantly, the ingredients for the poison are suspect. Bitter green is not deadly when eaten raw. In fact, you will only experience a brief feeling of enhanced intelligence. Its only real negative effect is a draining of endurance and magicka, nothing that will kill the imbiber. Wickwheat, however, could damage intelligence and paralyze, perhaps as a possible means of temporarily incapacitating a spy. There was also one ingredient left in the mixture that was not revealed. Still, none other than the previously mentioned negative effects could have come to fruition, and none of those are known to cause death. As this is the case, I suggest that the story is only just propaganda for propaganda's sake. The Song of the Alchemists, Ancient Tales of the Dwemer, Part 5, by Mirabar Sol. When King Moranian's alchemist had to leave his station after a laboratory experiment that yielded detonation, the word went out that the king did want a new savant to mix his potions and brews. But he declared he would only choose a fellow who knew the tricks and the tools. The king refused to hire on more fools. After much deliberation, discussions, and debates, the candidate picked two well-earned candidates, Eanthipus Minthurk and Umphatic Fair, an ambitious pair, vied to prove which one was the best. Said the king, there will be a test. They went to a large chamber with herbs, gems, tomes, pots, measuring cups, all under high crystalline domes. "Make me a tonic that will make me invisible," laughed the king in a tone some would call risible. So Umphatic Fair and Eanthipus Minthurk began to work, mincing herbs, mashing metal, refining strange oils, cautiously setting their cauldrons to burbling boils. Each on his own, sending mixing bowls mixing, sometimes peeking to see what the other was fixing. After they had worked for nearly 3/4 an hour, both Eanthipus Minthurk and Umphatic Fair winked at the other, certain he won. Said King Moranian, "Now you must taste the potions you've wrought. Take a spoon and sample it right from your pot." Minthurk vanished as his lips touched his brew, but Fair tasted his and remained apparent in view. "You think you mixed silver, blue diamonds, and yellow grass," the king laughed. "Look up, Fair, up to the ceiling glass. The light falling makes the ingredients you chose quite different hues. What do you get?" asked the floating voice, bold, of a potion of red diamonds, blue grass, and gold. "By Dwemer God," said Fair, his face in a wince, "I've made a potion to fortify my own intelligence." Publisher's note. This poetry is so clearly in the style of Gorfalim that it really does not need any commentary. Note the simple rhyming scheme of AA, BB, CC, the sing-song but purposefully clumsy meter, and the recurring jokes at the obviously absurd names, Umphatic Fair and Eanthipus Minthurk. The final joke that the stupid alchemist invents a potion to make himself smarter by pure accident would have appealed to the anti-intellectualism of audiences in the interregnum period, but would certainly be rejected by the Dwemer. Note that even Mirabar's Sol refuses to name any Dwemer gods. The Dwemer religion, if it can even be called that, is one of the most complex and difficult puzzles of their culture. Over the millennia, the song became a popular tavern song in High Rock before eventually disappearing from everything but scholarly books, much like the Dwemer themselves. This story, written by Marabar Sol, is the fifth part of an unfinished fiction series surrounding the ancient Dwemer. Although fictitious, it's still an interesting read and ends with a funny twist, the lesser alchemist having made a potion to increase his own mental acumen. By reading and internalizing some of these stories, we can come to know more about the popular views of alchemy, as well as the limits of the craft. Finally, since you have come this far in your studies, I feel you deserve the arcane knowledge of the best alchemists in all the land. But take heed. Once you know this information, you cannot come back from it. And often it can become drug-like, sapping your interest in any and all activity save the intoxication of liquid intellect. You have been warned. It is, in fact, possible to break and expand one's talent beyond the typical limits of alchemical study. This can be done by creating potions of intelligence fortification, then drinking them one at a time in order to compound the effects. Then, potions made in this state will become astronomically powerful. Watch closely, as I will only do this once, purely for educational purposes. As you can see, with only a few repetitions of this dangerous process, I can now use telekinesis in great magnitude. There are more nefarious uses of this practice, and I warn against it entirely. Again, you have been warned. After some time in my home province of Morrowind, I feel fully invigorated, though this may be due to the potion I ingested just before we began our adventure. The flora of Vardenfell has come to be more familiar to me than that which grows just outside my window, and as I take these notes, I realize what a grand task this treatise is coming to be. Here it was that my fascination with alchemy began, and perhaps my interest in the natural world as a whole. But it did not end there. Next, we shall journey 6 years in the future, landing in the dangerous but historically valuable year of the Oblivion Crisis. Before we move on to Cyrodiil, I'll be completing this segment of the treatise as its own volume. They will each be released individually, and I'm estimating there will be 3. After they're all completed, I'll be uploading a full video, similar in size to the dungeons of the Elder Scrolls. With that said, thank you so much for watching. By liking and subscribing to the channel, you'll support my efforts and see more interesting dives into the Elder Scrolls series. I'd also like to thank my patrons, including Koan, Rachel, and Rumorazin. The Patreon is where I share behind-the-scenes views of my video making process, as well as random fun bits from my life that don't fit the channel. If you're interested, you can click the link in the description and find it there. Now, some questions. What is your favorite ingredient set for Morrowind? Did you know Redguard had a potion-making feature? Do you think Morrowind's broken alchemy system should have been fixed before release? Let me know in the comments. Volume 2 will be out before you know it. Again, thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays, and I will see you soon.